grab a beverage or two and settle in. This is the Morning Tailgate on Raider Nation Radio 920, the flagship for the Silver and Black. Vince Sapienza, Vinny Bonsignor, Clay Baker, coming to you live from Las Vegas to Houston, where the Raiders wrapped up their joint practice on Tuesday. The film work continues ahead of their preseason game number 2. Soul Road preseason game on the schedule in H-Town tomorrow night. We learned a lot. We had eyes and ears on the ground, on the fields for said joint practice. Vinny Bonsignor will be with us to continue to break down what he saw. And, of course, Raider Nation Radio 920 has been there in full force. JT the Brick, Hugh Myers as well. Welcome in, everybody. Hope you're having a great week. Hope Tuesday's reports didn't ruin the mood. Let's just put it that way, Clay, because mid-show yesterday, as reports and tweets were coming in, it felt like, oh no, the world is everything's collapsing. Everything that was built in the 6 short months of Clint Kubiak.
Well, it's like, is the good news good, and is the bad news really all that bad?
That's what we need to figure out.
Right.
That's what we need to figure out. And as a reminder, and I think Kirk Cousins said it best yesterday following practice, that's the exact type of challenge and honest assessment the Raiders were looking for when they first set up this joint practice with Houston. They didn't want a bunch of pat on the backs making the trip over to Texas. They wanted to learn more about their team, and it feels like, at least in the immediate aftermath listening to Clint Kubiak, not only did they, but that information continues. Vinny Bonsignor with us live in Houston. Are we at the facility? Did you kick Nick Caserio out of his office to get a better home? What is the word? Docile home. What is it called? Docile? Domicile.
Domicile. Okay.
That's the word. Where are you at, Vinny? What's the word?
Yeah, first of all, shout out to Brandy Flores, who's also here for the Raider Nation radio team and doing a really fabulous job with all the help that she provides, kind of behind-the-scenes stuff, but invaluable. So when we talk about the Raider Nation radio team that's out here, she is out here doing a great job as well. I'm at my hotel. It's a quote-unquote, it's a day off for the team. Today, although not really a day off. They'll be meeting and doing all those things. They're going to get prepared for a game tomorrow, so no facility, no going over to the stadium today. It's a day to assess, and it's a day to get ready to go play, and it'll be interesting to see how many starters actually play after what happened yesterday. And yeah, the Raiders came here for answers. That's exactly why they came here. To Houston to get some answers about themselves, to see where they stand, and the Houston Texans. I wouldn't call it a dose of reality or maybe some harsh lessons on where exactly the Raiders are, and really, quite honestly, too, where the Texans are. That's a good football team over there, and I think they could do some damage once they get into the playoffs if they're so fortunate to get into the postseason. So it was two different teams on two different journeys, but for the Raiders to really get a look at. All right, where does the offensive line stand? Where do the two quarterbacks stand? Where do we just stand as a football team going against a playoff contending team and one of the best defenses in the NFL? And as I wrote, it could be a tricky thing sometimes when you go looking for answers, because if you're not prepared for what you see or what you hear, it could hit you like a 2x4. And there was no question that the Houston Texans were the better team yesterday. And I think we intuitively knew that going in to yesterday. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the Raiders got dominated every single play. That's not what happened at all. And I wouldn't even classify it as a bad thing. Even talking to people in the organization, it's okay to understand, look, this is the gap that we need to close. And they're going to me, continue to close that gap through the course of the season, assuming they stay relatively healthy. They're not going to. I don't think they're going to catch the Houston Texans this year or some of the elite teams in the NFL, unless there's some magic in the air. But if we're being realistic, this is a year about closing that gap and getting closer, and then doing it all over again next year, and just keep working at it. so that you eventually become a team like the Texans or quite honestly better. That's what you're shooting for, is to be even better. And sometimes you need those, that reality check, I guess, if you want to call it that. And the Raiders got one yesterday, and that's not a bad thing. It wasn't a bad day. It wasn't a loss by any stretch of the imagination. It was an informational day, and I think the Raiders understand that. They've got it in perspective, and now they're going to go back and watch the film and try to figure out ways how to close that gap, continue to close that gap this year and beyond.
It's a reminder of the context, right, of the two teams as well. When you look at the Houston Texans, a team that is a favorite to likely win their division, be a playoff team, obviously, and then set sail on what they hope is a run in January and into February. For the Raiders, again, if you take away everything that happened for a second, you're going in there, as we talked about a week ago, you're going in there for a stiff test to see where you are. I don't know, based on everything that I heard, obviously talking to you, talking to others there, that they're all of a sudden 2 steps back from what the thoughts of them moving forward actually are. They went up against a really good team in Houston, and it looked like a team that was still in the infancy of what they're building compared to a team that is trying to get over that hump for a long Super Bowl run.
Yeah, and the other, not to make any excuses whatsoever. This is not time for excuses. You want to be, give yourself an honest assessment, and that's what the Raiders got. But the Raiders also had a hard practice on Monday, and they traveled on Monday to Texas for an early morning practice in Houston, Texas. So there were also some extenuating circumstances as well. The Texans didn't have to travel; they were, comfortably. They practice at their facility. So I'm assuming players, at least the veterans, are home at their homes. So that changed, that helped the Texans a little bit. But all that aside, no, I'm completely with you. They didn't take 2 steps backwards. This was just an honest assessment of where they are. And would you have loved to have gone out there and kicked some ass and taken names? Of course, that would have meant that you're ahead of where maybe you thought you were, at this stage of the process. But they weren't. They kind of are where they are, and the Texans are where they are, and that was extremely evident yesterday. And I'll also say this: I know we're going to get into Fernando Mendoza, but I thought I was really encouraged by Fernando Mendoza. There was a lot that was going on up at the line of scrimmage, that we knew, and we talked about this day after day after day leading up to yesterday. That defensive front is arguably the best in the NFL. I can't think of 2 better ends than Hunter and Anderson. They're just tremendous. And then that's on top of what they have in the interior, et cetera, et cetera. But as ramped up as it was, as fast as his clock got sped up because of that pressure, as chaotic as it sometimes got, Fernando Mendoza, not one time, and I watched every single snap, there wasn't one time that he looked rattled, he looked befuddled, he looked, unsure of himself. He didn't always make good decisions. We'll talk about, one of the more egregious ones that he made. But, and, not to throw Cam Ward under the bus, but I spent a full day watching Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans going up against the San Francisco 49ers defense at their joint practice. And guess what I saw in a Cam Ward? A lot of confusion, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of the head moving around, like, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do in this situation? Fernando stood there and took it, basically, number one. Number two, he was fine in making his progressions. Did he always make the right decision? No, but there wasn't any deer in the headlight look, in spite of the fact that there was chaos sometimes going on in front of him, which I honestly, and I'm not trying to paint a overly, optimistic picture, but I loved that about Fernando Mendoza. That was extremely telling to me and important for me to see, because it would have been very easy for him to fall into that young quarterback trap of, you've seen it. The head's kind of moving around. Like, where am I supposed to go with the ball right here? Just tucking it away and running and bailing out on the play. There was zero of that, in spite of all sorts of opportunities where it could have turned that way.
I think one of the biggest things is, as everybody takes a breath from what yesterday was, because, again, mid-show, the reports are coming out and say, domination. Like, it's over. The season's over before it began. But, again, I feel this is how I felt mid-show and trying to, bounce between, okay, this is happening. This is maybe what that means. And now having a day to look, think, hear, it doesn't quell, or shouldn't, in my opinion, quell or change or lower any of the optimism that we have discussed with the team for the previous 3.5 weeks in terms of the Raiders, in terms of the young guys, the optimism that is there, the potential that is there. Potential is not realized week 1 of the NFL season, right? Like even Brock Bowers, as good as he was from the moment, and we all kind of knew it takes time for it to become fully realized. It is, and maybe he's not even the best example because he was so good out of the gate, but what I'm getting at is you take a Fernando Mendoza, and I'm more so talking about guys in the secondary, right? Because there's a lot of questions about the defense, and Vinny, we'll get into that, what you saw, right? But like the optimism that is shared from the young players, whether it was in this draft or year 2 guys, shouldn't be quelled because they had a tough day at the office yesterday on Tuesday because they went up against a superior team. And let's call it what it is. The Houston Texans are a superior team in relation to the Las Vegas Raiders today. That could change in 2 months. That could change in 3 weeks, depending on a number of different things. But that's what it is right now. We have talked about, and Spytech has talked about that clear vision. It's not going to be 1 year, 1 day, 1 month. This thing is going to be a build. Sometimes it's going to feel slow. You got to have patience. But the pieces, I think we have talked about are in the best place possible in a number of years for this Raiders to see that potential fully realized.
Yeah, I agree. And, if you want to talk about that defense, one thing that has already stood out to me, and it goes back to the Arizona Cardinals game and then, yesterday in particular, it's much easier to get this kind of an assessment when you're facing other teams and are really put in some competitive situations against somebody else other than your own teammates. And one thing that's abundantly clear to me and is the fact that this is a very young. It's not even a young secondary. It's an extraordinarily young secondary when you really think about it. With those cornerbacks, the young cornerbacks, and Traden Stukes bringing in a young safety, and so it would be one thing if you're plugging in one young guy to the equation. You're trying to really get 3-4 young guys, up to speed together, and that's not going to always look good. Now, I will say this. Once you turn the corner, and that could happen at any moment, and unfortunately for the Raiders, you're asking 3 or 4 in some cases guys to turn the corner as quickly as possible, and everybody's timeline is a little bit different. But eventually, that to me, because of the talent, guys are going to turn the corner in a right way, and then once that happens, away they go because they've got the talent to do that. It's just going to take a little time for that to kind of come together, and so. Like when you watch the Houston Texans defense, this is a veteran defense that's been together, a couple minutes now, and you can see the cohesion, you can see the cohesiveness, all of that. So, and you can see that in the secondary. I mean, you're talking about some studs in that secondary. The Raiders have some potential studs in their secondary, but they are extremely raw right now. That's going to be something that I think Raider Nation has to have some patience with, and the Raiders have to have some patience with. I know the organization does. Hope fans do as well. One glaring thing that I did see, and this has been, this is a box that the Raiders are going to eventually have to check off. I don't know that you're going to be able to do it this year, but the interior of the defensive line, yesterday there was a lot of problems stopping the run. It was blatant, to be honest with you, and it has been a concern, as far as how effective the Raiders are going to be at the point of attack in terms of that run defense. That's something that if you're Robbie Leonard and you're part of that defensive think tank, you got to figure out a way to really scheme and be able to kind of make up for some of the things that you might not actually have on the roster right now. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on moving forward. But part of that is just the kind of personnel that you need to be a stout run defense up front at the point of attack. Again, there's some things that you can do schematically to help things out or help maybe cover some deficiencies. But that's a little bit of an issue right now. They lack that one kind of, or even two, just stud defensive tackles. That can be an asset in that part of the game. So that was pretty glaring yesterday. We'll see in the game on Thursday if there are some improvements that they can make, and then of course throughout the course of the season. Really like the linebacker work. Quay Walker, N'Kobe Dean, Lindenberg, who I think is just having a fabulous training camp, and his arrow is really pointed up. There were some nice things that you saw from some of those young secondary players. It's just going to take a little time for that defense to come together, for some individual players to turn that corner. And as I mentioned with that interior of the defensive line, that might be some help that you need to get down the road.
We've talked since Rob Leonard came on board, and Clint Kubiak and them kind of come on and say, we're going to have that base of 3-4. We're going to be a bunch of different things. We'll see where we're at, but we got to have a starting point somewhere, and that starting point is going to be a 3-4 defense. We talked a lot about it. We had a lot of experts and analysts on it, but the one thing that we have said since that particular moment, okay, when are they getting that D tackle? Where is he? And early on, he wasn't on the roster. Seemingly, to your point, not on the roster in terms of that point of attack, game record, 3-4 nose tackle, D tackle, which is why I think a lot of people continue to bring up the name Vita Vea. And I don't want to open up that can of worms, but when that's out there and you're trying to establish something and you're trying to establish run, maybe Vita Vea isn't going to get you, a Super Bowl or anything like that, but maybe he's the guy that can help, be the stopgap to finding your next guy so that when the team is ready, you're not sitting there having a leaky faucet in run defense. That's the argument to going out and getting a Vita Vea with the money that is available to you right now. Regardless of his age or what's going on, because I agree with you, Vinny. I don't see it on the roster right now, and you're going to have to get real creative if you're the Raiders because you don't have that prototypical nose tackle to run a 3-4 defense.
And it's not really even just the nose tackle of a 3-4 defense. I'm talking about just stud defensive tackles to begin with. Tonka Hemingway, I think, has a bright future. Right now, I see it more as a pass rusher than a run stopper. And so I'm not even just singling out the nose tackle. But if we want to go there, let's go there. I just don't. What I saw of the Raiders yesterday, to me, it's just not the time to bring in to invest what you have to invest in, even if it's a second-round pick and obviously the money that it would take to retain him. I just don't think it's the right time. When I look at the roster as a whole, it's not the time to go get a nose tackle and pay him a whole bunch of money. A 32-year-old nose tackle at that. If you're the Houston Texans or something like that, where hey, we need to somebody goes down or whatever the case might be, that makes perfect sense for a team like that, like the Cincinnati Bengals or the Seattle, somebody that's there right now, the Washington Commander, the teams that are right there on the cusp. I don't view the Raiders as that as being right there. So really for that reason, considering the cost that it would go to get him and the age of the player, I'm not ready to invest those kind of assets for somebody that, like you said, is kind of ultimately going to be a stopgap based on his age to help bridge the Raiders to where they want to ultimately get. And then at that point, you're still going to have to go get, a guy like him to replace him. So
right, but what I mean is the argument, though, is if you can't establish what you want as a team because you can't stop the run, meaning on offense, you can't run the ball because you are getting gashed on the other side and you're constantly down in the game, then you're not only taking a step back defensively, it's now bleeding into your offense. It's bleeding into your development of the run game. It's bleeding into your development of when and if a Fernando Mendoza gets entered into the game because he's going to have to drop back 50 times. I'm just saying, I'm talking a little bit extreme right now. If the Raiders, again, it's one practice and it's one viewing from you, and I'm not taking away from your viewing because I agree with you. The run defense is a question mark. But what I'm saying is if it gets to the point where they can't stop the run, it's going to derail the entirety of the team. So at what point do you have to make a decision for the good of the team to go out and get a guy like a Vita Vea go out and invest something right now to basically plug up that hole so that you can accomplish some of the things you still need to accomplish. And I'm not talking about getting to a playoff spot this year. I'm talking about just getting your offense, your defense off the ground.
Well, if there's a guy like Vita that's 27 years old, I'm all for it. But exactly him, no, not for me. Not because of his age. No, I'm gonna suck it up this year. I'm gonna figure it out. If I'm Clint Kubiak and Robbie Lederner, I'm gonna put together something that's gonna be able to mask some of the deficiencies and get the damn job done to a sufficient clip. I'm not gonna sit here and say that you can make these guys, the second coming of the steel curtain or anything like that. But there's got to be a way that you're going to be able to figure it out from a personnel standpoint to at least be somewhat solid, and not be embarrassing or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that that's even what the Raiders are right now in the run defense. I'm just saying that it's something that's been a little bit noticeable. So if there's somebody like him that fits the age group, yes, absolutely. I do believe that they're actually going to be actively seeking to bring somebody in at that position if somebody becomes available. They're advantageous in the waiver wire process. They'll have the at least to start off, one of the first selections or at the head of the line in that, because they were tied for the worst record last year. So if somebody like that becomes available and the investment is either nominal or worthwhile considering the age and the level of the player, then I'm all for that. It's just not him. That's the one guy that I would say, no, as good as it sounds, obviously it sounds, he would make the defensive line better without question. But you're looking at the long range here, not just the short term, and so that's my reasoning for saying I love the idea in theory. Love the player without a doubt, but where the Raiders are, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, again, I'm just keeping all options on the table because that is me looking to the future. That is me raising the floor now for the future. Because if the team can't accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, that's all I'm saying. Doesn't have to be.
I'd be hard pressed to say that that's going to be their demise this year. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be an issue that they got to deal with, but I don't think it's going to be, looking back, I don't think we're going to say the Raiders struggling against the run or not being great against the run was the reason the whole thing went off the tracks. I don't see it as that big of a problem. It's an issue, no question about it. But I don't think it's going to be the thing that sabotages their season.
Okay, then that eases that. I was just simply saying if it gets to the extreme to where you can't do anything, then you might have to throw up a Hail Mary type situation to fix it so that it's for the good of the team. 702-365-9200 is the number. Did Tuesday's joint practice change your thoughts, hopes, desires, expectations for what the Raiders will be this upcoming season? We want to hear from you. We're going to take your calls. We're going to get to your text messages, plus more ins, outs, sights, sounds from what was on Tuesday from our own Vinny Bonsignor, who is live in Houston. We're going to hear from the team, Fernando Mendoza, Clint Kubiak. We're going to hear from Kirk Cousins, who, again, it makes all the sense why he is here. Why? Because he brings us level-headed. When he sits there and he says, this is exactly why we came. Came here to get information. We didn't come here to win the day, even though that is our hope, to win everything we do. We didn't come to win on a Tuesday in August. We came to get better for the 2026 campaign. Once a Raider, always a Raider continues in hour number 2, top of the hour. 8:30, Adam Hill with the Las Vegas Review-Journal will join us. And then hour number 3, Tape Don't Lie with Marcus Johnson at 9 o'clock. We've got a jam-packed show, so we want to hear from you now. We want to get it in while we can. 702-365-9200. But first,
by the way, Adam, same hotel. He and Sam Gordon are at the same hotel as I am, so I think I could hear him snoring right now. They probably, knowing those guys, we'll have to ask them about the late night that they, I'm sure, had in Houston. Those guys can really burn the midnight oil, and I can't wait to hear what shenanigans they got into last night. But hey, guys, Are you craving real Mexican food that's been doing it right for generations? Then it's time for Sal's Mexican Restaurant, a Central Valley tradition since 1942. We're talking about the kind of food that keeps people coming back. Stacked burritos, sizzling fajitas, legendary enchiladas, and those award-winning tamales that everybody's talking about. And here's the best part. Whether you're in Selma, Madera, or Fresno, Sal's has a location ready for you. Plus, Raider Nation, listen up. Sal's is always about the silver and black. Whether it's a game night, day, a boxing match, UFC fight night, anytime, this is your spot to go to. If you can't make it in, no problem. You can get Sal's delivered straight to your door wherever you are. Just go to salsmexicanrestaurant.com and place your order right now. They'll deliver it to you wherever you are. Don't wait. Don't settle. Sal's Mexican Restaurant. Tradition, flavor, and Raider pride served up fresh every single day.
Something you have to learn, especially as a quarterback, but the next couple plays, we ever had a 2-minute drive, we weren't able to capitalize, but I didn't feel any burden after that play. It was like, okay, cool, it happened, but now I got to focus on the next play, on the next present moment. It would be letting my teammates down if I let that burden me throughout the next couple series of plays, because then I wouldn't be able to play on time, and they wouldn't be able to rely on me. But I think there's going to be negative plays. Whether it's a negative play, whether it's one of the teammates, whether it's me, whatever it is, we all are able to bounce back from it and have a forward-thinking and optimistic mindset. Whether it's, hey, tranquilo, which means calm in Spanish, hey, tranquilo, and move forward, So.
Welcome back inside the tailgate. Tranquilo. I got to be honest. First thing I thought when I heard tranquilo, Vinny, and you'll be surprised, it wasn't a T-shirt. That was my second thought.
Tequila.
that was thought number 3.
That was my first. Like in real time, I'm like, are you?
I know.
It's like, some shots here.
Can we do a tranquilo and soda with a lime?
My mind immediately went to Raider Edge. Well, I guess we need a song entitled Tranquilo.
Oh, okay.
Bring it down a little bit. Maybe something very acoustic with the guitar. Just saying.
Yeah, right.
Just throwing that out
Raider
there.
Reggie's makeout music album.
Whoa.
When we turn the lights down low.
But that's where I want to pick up the conversation with Fernando, and you touched on it at the top, Vinny. And obviously you watched every rep. And hearing him right there, the other soundbite that really, struck a chord, if you will, with me was, when he sits there and goes, look, there was good, there bad, there were some throws I want. Actually, that's a lie. Sorry, I lied. I don't want those throws back because those are the ones that are going to help me figure out what I can do, can't do, get away with. What do I need to improve? How can I fix that? How can I upgrade that? Et cetera, et cetera. And that is what we call, what I tell my kids, a growth mindset. that is the definition of a growth mindset. But that bite that we just heard right there, aside from the tranquilo, moving on, right? Like, you can't let Tuesday's practice affect Wednesday's film session. You can't let Wednesday's film session affect what you're going to go out and do in the preseason game Thursday night in Houston. And I think the fact that, and that's why, Vinny, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth. That is one of the main reasons for me, and I think for us here, why we are more than okay with throwing Fernando out there, and it's not even throwing him out there, earlier rather than later, because he already has that ability to move on to the next play. Knowing it's not going to be perfect. Perfect is unrealistic. But the fact that it's not going to weigh on him. That red zone interception that he threw trying to fit it into Ashton Genty is not going to weigh on him on the next play or in the next quarter. He's going to be able to move on from it.
Yeah, and guys, I got to be fully honest right here. I didn't like Fernando's response to what happened yesterday. I loved it. Honestly, I loved it. And it's exactly what we've been talking about. This guy is unbreakable. I'm saying that right now. I've been saying that. He's wired. You talk about there's no perfection. I'm going to tell you this right now. He's wired perfectly for all this. And that's a very important trait to have. It's a superpower, if you will. He knows how to keep things in perspective. And I will say this, too. If you're talking about glimpses of perfection, the throw to Brock Bowers, it was a thing of beauty. And it wasn't just the throw. It was sparkling, and it was beautiful. It was the offensive line, gave him the time. It was a great route by Brock Bowers. It was a great schematic play by Clint Kubiak. They basically had the two safeties almost run right into each other, and they crossed each other, left Brock Bowers wide open. It was a slice of perfection, and as Clint told me afterwards, you just need to see more of those, right? On a day like Tuesday, they didn't, unfortunately, but that was a slice of the perfection that you're looking for on a play where everybody does their job perfectly, and the results were perfect results. But even that was just for Fernando. Move on to the next one. You love it. You cheer. And then it's on to the next play, and that's what I was, trying to get to earlier today. Whether it was good, and there was a lot of bad, not from what he did. I'm not saying that he was bad yesterday at all, really. I mean, yeah, the interception, you want to have that back, and there were a couple of throws that missed their target, but there were also a lot of throws that hit their target, and there was a great response from my visuals to the sometimes chaotic that was going on around him. I always look for young quarterbacks. Vince, I'm sure you're the same exact way. You want to see, what do they look like out there? Like, look, to me, sometimes Jackson Dart has that, I know that he's running around. There was that touchdown throw that he made, and everyone was celebrating that touchdown throw, but it was really kind of where do I go with the ball? And he just sort of threw it up there with, kind of a hope and a prayer, and it happened. It's great. You want to see the young quarterback do that, and maybe he's not the best example, But you see quarterbacks who sort of they look frightened out there. They look confused. They look bewildered. They look unsure of themselves when it gets like that. Fernando never looks like that to me, and so I loved the fact that he had to play under the kind of duress that he did yesterday, and I loved the response to it. And what I loved even in real time, and what I like even more is that now he goes back and watches the film and fixes whatever needs to be fixed, or learns from whatever bad happened and good happened, and has it in the perfect right perspective.
When oftentimes organizations talk about putting a young quarterback out there, they feel like, that we don't want to throw him out there if he's not ready. And it's not just physically ready. Are you mentally or emotionally ready to deal with the rigors of what a season can do and how good and bad practices can kind of weigh on you? Fernando Mendoza has never displayed any of those problems. Is it dealing with problems or things that he needs to work on has been something that he's been very welcome and open to, and somebody that has been also displaying the fact that he is now showing you, all right, I'll make a mistake one week, but that same mistake will not appear the next. So that is growth in a way that very uncommon to see, but extremely welcome to see.
And this is not a new thing for him either, and that's the reason why I feel so convicted about this. Just go back and watch him, even at the most trying moments at Cal, and you could even go back further than that. This isn't somebody that was handed things on a silver platter. I'm not trying to say that a 5-star recruit has things handed on a silver platter, but there's usually there's a difference between being a 5-star guy or a 4-star guy, and where Fernando was in his journey going from high school to college. He wasn't one of those guys that were singled out at an early age, like this is a can't miss prospect, and sometimes that can help you mind wise, as a young player or a high school kid. Sometimes it could actually hurt you because it comes a little bit too easy, and that's a whole different story for another day. But he never had that confidence in terms of outward confidence by others to say, man, you're one of those types of dudes. If you do this, and this, everything's going to be great. You're going to reach your ceiling. You're going to be fine, and everyone's going to be falling all over themselves for you. It was the opposite for him. He had to find the confidence from an inward way to say, okay, not everybody's seeing what I believe in myself, and I'm just going to have to keep chipping away and force them to have the kind of confidence in me that I already have in myself. And that's a whole different kind of journey than somebody that is that 5-star and that everybody's falling all over themselves for. So for me, when I talk about this kid's not breakable, it's not just what he's been doing so far with the Raiders. It's every step along a difficult way for him. And when I say difficult, I'm talking about from a football sense, not necessarily in life sense or anything like that. He's been a great family and all that kind of stuff. So all that checks out. But what I'm saying is from a football sense, it's not always been easy for Fernando, from what he had to do to just get where he got. to sometimes the struggles on a bad football team at Cal and taking a what beating quite often in games, all of that, having to work his way up the depth chart. It didn't come easy for him, but he handled every step along the way exactly how you would want somebody to handle it, and that's just a continuation. That's why I feel like I'm not worried about Fernando in that sense. He's not one of those guys that I would be like, oh my gosh, this is going to be too much for him. There really isn't anything that's too much for him from a football perspective.
702-365-9200. Did Tuesday change any of your outlook, expectations, hopes, wants, desires? Moving forward in the 2026 campaign, let's sneak in a phone call, shall we? Raider Dave in Denver joining us here on the Morning Tailgate. Good morning.
Somber heart that it's with a somber heart that Colorado Springs is losing out on a ZZ Top concert, but always your guys' banter in the morning does cheer me up, especially when it's Vinny and Vince, spy versus spy in an old Mad magazine about if they need some better help at the defensive tackle position. Great radio, guys. I love what Vince is saying about you got to have the ability to stop the run, because if you don't, your defense is going to get worn down. And if you do, and I don't know if while I was trying to call in you guys may have said this, so apologize if you did, when you do stop the run, it puts pressure on your defensive backfield. But at the same point, we've got a pretty good pass rusher, too, so they can pin their ears back and go. I love what Vinny's saying about it, too. It's not going to make a huge difference to get somebody like Vea right away. It's not going to make the Raiders a playoff or Super Bowl contender just adding one person. But, man, I just don't see what happened last year as something we want to happen again with the defense getting so worn down in these games. And what that does is it shortens the clock. It shortens the game. You lose ball control. You lose time of possession. And then I just don't see, and you guys, I know, haven't seen the Raiders have the type of receiving core that's going to win a shootout to try to come back. So I have to lean a little bit with Vince here. I think that there needs to be a shore up of the front defensive line in order for the Raiders to have success. I'm happy that the offensive line has some success, but
that's not the argument that he and I are having. I've been the one that's been pointing out that there's some concerns in the building about that deficiency. The argument is, and it's not really an argument, he's just taken a counter argument that maybe some people on that specific player. That's where it's a no for me because of the age of that player and how much it would cost to go get him. I'm clear.
I get it.
Beyond a shadow of a doubt, they need help on the interior of the defensive line. That is as clear as day. But you can't just because you have a need go out and make a irresponsible move where you are in your journey. So let's make it clear. I'm with them. We're obviously it's obvious to anybody.
We're on the same page in terms of the need. The question is, and I guess this becomes the layered question that maybe only inside the building can and will answer. Right? Is what is the DEF CON? What's the good one or what's the bad one? What's the worst one?
To give up a second-round pick and plus, and then $100 million or whatever it might be.
If it's so desperate, whatever the DEF CON is, if the desperation level is so high because that is such a glaring need, my argument is out there that you need to go out and do something. Whether it's Vita Vea or something, you have to go throw some kind of Hail Mary because that is going to bleed into the rest of the team. And you are not going to be able to accomplish what you're looking to accomplish, whether it's by a huge jump or incrementally under Clint Kubiak in year one on both offense and defense, if that is such a glaring issue that they can't stop the run, that it's preventing them from doing what they want to do, not only on defense, but offense, etc. Raider Dave, we appreciate the phone call. Thanks so much. It is a fun conversation because at the end of the day, only inside the building truly knows, especially as we get into the regular season where we don't get eyes on practice, and they do, and they get to see really where their deficiencies are and just kind of the level to which that deficiency is, what decisions have to be made. It's not too dissimilar to what, I feel like was happening last year late in the offseason when they felt they needed to bring Amari Cooper in. They're like, we saw a lot. We need to bring this guy, and obviously didn't work, etc. We'll continue the conversation on the other side, 702-365-9200. It's the Tailgate. Welcome back inside the Tailgate, 702-365-9200. The Tuesday change. Your thoughts, hopes, desires, outlook for the 2026 season. The Raiders joint practice with the Texans out to the phones. Papa Meach, good morning. Welcome to the Tailgate.
Hey, guys, it's been a little bit. How are you guys doing?
All right, good. Thank you.
Very good.
Good. And, well, I want to talk a little bit about Fernando, and that is, that news conference, how he answers all those questions are phenomenal. But my feeling has always been play him as soon as possible. When we all drive cars, and the law says you have to have an insurance policy. So to me, Kirk is our insurance policy. Doesn't mean you got to use it. You don't want to use the insurance policy when you're driving a car. Kirk Cousins is the insurance policy. And I've always said all along, if the offensive line looks like a lot of the problems had last year is not all solved, but it's a lot better and the quarterback's going to have time, then you play him. If there's not much difference between the two when it's time for the green light to come on and play the season, you play him. If Kirk is still way ahead of him, then yes, I guess you got to play Kirk. I'm still more a proponent of playing Fernando, but here's my big point, and that is the more games that he plays this season, because he's going to be our starting quarterback next season. Anybody who thinks that it's going to be Kirk Cousins is goofy. I mean, so if you're getting him ready, and that's the goal, to play as soon as possible, and you say, okay, well, we're going to play Kirk in the beginning. The more games Fernando plays this season, the better, because then he's going to be more prepared for the NFL when he starts this season next year. And one last point, guys. If you want to know about this character, I've said this before in the show, but when he and his dad took almost a month off, and they visited, I think the first trip was 26 teams in person, got in the car, drove to all these schools. He tried out, he met with the coaches, he goes on the field, he tries out. And what does this guy get? I think he was 17 years old. He gets 26 no's, we don't want you on our team. 26! And then he and his dad went on and did 4 more and did 30 total of no's. How many quarterbacks, name all the great ones, could go through that and still have a smile on their face and say, I'm going to make it in the NFL? He has got character, man, guys. So I say start him as soon as possible.
Good call, Papa Meach. Appreciate that.
Papa Meach, thanks for the call. Really appreciate it. Fernando is again, topic not only here but nationally as well, and feels like a guy who continues to change the conversation every time he goes out, Vinny.
Yeah, and what you're looking for are some benchmarks and how he handles things and how he responds to things. And there were enough good throws when he did have the time yesterday for me to say, okay, he's right where he needs to be, maybe even a little bit ahead of things. It was tough for either of the quarterbacks, and this goes to Kirk Cousins. I thought Fernando actually had the better day than Kirk Cousins, but it was a tough day for both. And not necessarily because of things that they were doing. It was things that they weren't allowed to do. I don't remember. I'm trying to think of maybe on one hand where there were throws, taking throws downfield to wide receivers. There just wasn't enough time to let that kind of unfold. And on the other part of that, I was a little bit disappointed with some of the separation that some of the wide receivers were getting as well over the course of the entire practice. So that's another thing to kind of keep an eye on. But yeah, I think Fernando's right where he needs to be. I'm with Papa Meach. I would be shocked if he didn't play extensively this season. But there is one caveat, and we've keep talking about it. If they get on a great roll, then you stick with Kirk for as long as possible, because you don't want to waste a season if they're showing some promise. And by the way, the one thing, Vince, I think this offensive line is going to get better. This is not time for anybody to panic. I'm starting to sense that a little bit. We knew that the offensive line, they're going to get better. I firmly believe that. I'd be shocked and surprised if that wasn't the case by the end of the season. It's just kind of the starting point right now.
We'll get more into the offensive line, defensive line, overall joint practice reactions from Tuesday. 702-365-9200. But coming up next, once a Raider, always a Raider, here on The Tailgate. We're flying through into hour number 2 here on the Morning Tailgate. It is Raider Nation Radio 920. Vince Sapienza, Vinny Bonsignor, and Clay Baker coming to you live from Las Vegas to Houston following the Raiders' joint practice with the Texans on Tuesday. We will continue to get your thoughts and reactions on the Raiders' outlook following Tuesday's joint practice. Have they changed for you? 702-365-9200. But right now, from the present, we take a trip into the past. And it is once again that time. Once a Raider, always a Raider, as we welcome in legends and greats of the silver and black from yesteryear into the here and the now, doing a little reminiscing, doing a little prognosticating into what they're seeing in the current form. And joining us now here on the Morning Tailgate is Super Bowl champion Monte Johnson. Monte, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. How are we doing?
Good morning. Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad to be on the radio with you and talking to the Raider Nation.
All right, Monte, 99 regular season games under your belt, a second-round pick in the 73 draft. Talk to us about, quite simply, what it means when you hear once a Raider, always a Raider, and how that journey started for you.
Well, I guess the journey started really as a result of Al Davis seeing me in a postseason bowl game in Tampa when I was invited to participate after my senior year. Not having started at Nebraska and always been a backup and never having played linebacker before, I approached my college coach, Bob Devaney, and he was able to pull some strings to get me into that game. Well, one day while we were out practicing, just helmets and shorts, all the defensive line were going to run some schemes for the offensive line, and all the linebackers and defensive backs were overdoing 7-on-7 with the wide receivers, running backs, and quarterbacks. And so they said, hey, we need someone to be a linebacker. And so I looked around and, I was the only kind of freebie person standing around. And so I said, I'll do it. What do you want me to do? And they said, well, we'll tell you what to do. Just scrape off of this defensive lineman, shoot this gap. So I said, okay. Well, 20 feet away, watching that drill was Al Davis. After that drill was over with, he turned to Ron Wolf, who was the player personnel director at the time, and said, I'm not sure which of 7 positions he's going to play for us, but I'm going to turn him into a linebacker.
Classic.
And so, now mind you, I never started at Nebraska, and let me add a little secondary note here. I'm the only person in the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame that never started. So I must have done something right.
Yeah, and
so anyways,
and so what? Go ahead.
I was going to say, and so what happens then is now, that's in the January of 1973, the year that I was drafted. And so only a few weeks later is the draft itself. And so you fast forward to the day of the draft, and, that was quite the draft because the first player picked, if you remember, was who? Ray Guy.
Oh, wow.
So Ray was the number 1 draft pick. First time ever a kicker was picked that way. And, of course, Al was a genius with regards to trying to find, great additions to improve the team. And, of course, Ray was an incredible asset to our team. So then they come around to the second round. And so they're asking everybody, who do you want to draft? And all the different people and scouts and so forth and coaches are saying, we want this person to do that and so forth. And then they finally said to Al, who do you want to think we should pick? And he goes, we're going to pick Monte Johnson. And they all went, who? So now how do I know all of this? Tom Grimes, who was also working in the front office, after I had been drafted and signed my contract and was going to report to camp, he picked me up at the Oakland airport, and we had about an hour and a half to drive up to Santa Rosa. And he told me all these stories.
Wow.
about what happened, not only in that bowl game, but also the day of the draft. And of course, it just goes on and on and on because now all the coaching staff said, well, we really need this person. He's never played linebacker before, et cetera. And Al says, no, we're picking Monte Johnson. And so I get a phone call in my apartment. And the person says, Monte Johnson? I said, yes. He says, this is Sid Green with the Dallas Cowboys, and we've just drafted you. I said, you're kidding. And he said, yes, I am. And he hung up.
What a great draft experience.
I hear this laughter in the background, and I open up the apartment door, and standing in the hallway were 4 guys that lived across the hall, and they just phone scammed me. And they're just dying laughing, and I'm, chuckling, ha, 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 and so forth. Well, it is less than 10 minutes later, the phone rings again, and this time it's a woman. And, of course, I proved that the N on the helmet stands for knowledge.
Yes.
I said to these guys who think I'm a fool, now they've got their girlfriend to pretend she's an operator. So she says, Monte Johnson, please hold for Tom Grimes with the Oakland Raiders. And I said, sure. Tom gets on the phone, and I don't know this, but I'm on a speakerphone. And he says, Monte, this is Tom Grimes with the Oakland Raiders, and we just selected you as the 49th player chosen in this year's draft in the second round. And I said, sure, and I hung
up. Oh, you had been set up to do that.
And so I'm waiting now for the laughter in the hallway, and I hear nothing, and I open up the door, and there's no one out there. And my wife of today, my fiance, was sitting there in the apartment, and I looked at her, I said, babe, I think I just hung up on the Oakland Raiders.
Well, it all ended up working out, and a couple things just listening to that story. Number one, I'm hoping you guys named your first child Tampa, because what a life-changing moment that was, just to be there. Number one, because if that doesn't happen, none of this happens, probably, right? I mean, I'm sure you would have, gotten to a team somehow, some way, but that opened the door for you to be the second round pick. Number one. Number two, can you imagine if Twitter or social media was around for that draft, not just Ray Guy, but then you? I mean, I can only imagine fans and all the overreaction that we make. And what's funny to me is that I would never question Al Davis, and he's such a genius that he saw what nobody else saw, maybe not even yourself, to go ahead and make two what were, quite honestly, picks that people would criticize nowadays, and maybe they did at the time. I don't know, but the fact that it all worked out is just such a brilliant tribute to you and to Al Davis. And I'm looking at your game logs. You didn't play, it doesn't look like anyway, your first 2 years. So it sounds like, or seems like, there was also a process to learn how to play linebacker once you got the NFL, and there was an investment made in development, and then you turned the corner, obviously, and had a nice career. But what were those first couple of years like, now learning how to play linebacker?
Yeah, that's a great point. But it became pretty clear during the training camp my rookie year that I was going to stay at linebacker. They weren't going to switch me to one of those other Colts 7 positions, if you will. Right. And so my rookie year, I played a lot. If you remember, we had a typical 4-3 defense, 3-4 defense, where we had 3 linebackers and 4 defensive linemen. But then one of the things that we played a lot of was we substituted a linebacker for one of the defensive linemen, and we put in 4 linebackers on passing downs, blitzing downs, et cetera. And myself, along with Tony Klein, was mainly the person that would be playing. And if there was going to be a passing situation where they were going to have someone blitz, they would, typically leave Tony in the game. And if it was going to be more where they wanted me involved in coverage, because I took to covering backs out of the backfield kind of like, duck to a water. It just became very natural and something I did well. And once I got to the point where I took over the job as middle linebacker, I never left the field. I stayed in there for the pass coverage, whereas they would take out a couple of the other linebackers and bring in 2 extra defensive backs. As many times we played with 6 defensive backs when there was an obvious passing situation. So I played a lot my rookie year and the second year, but they actually did make that transition in 1975 when I took over the starting job.
Well, Monte, you became a major cog in the wheel for the Raiders defense, and I was wondering if you could take us back to that magical game, Christmas Eve 1977 in Baltimore at Memorial Stadium, and this game goes to double overtime, and it's known everywhere as Ghost in the Post, but there also is a caveat to that where Monte Johnson goes and has 2 sacks and 22 overall tackles. What do you remember of that game?
Well, that game is etched in my mind, and because I would say with those kinds of numbers, by far it was the game that I had the most plays, tackles, and it was a significant and a very, very important game for us. On the road, traveling to play in the playoffs, and so The beginning of the game was a scenario where they were trying to run the ball, and it just happened to be that every time they were running the ball, I was there, and I was taking down the running back. And then we had scored a number of points in the first part of the game, and then Baltimore came back and made it a really close game. And then we get into the second half, and instead of throwing the ball, the Colts go back to a running game, and we shut them down again. And so there was no scores, and and very, very little scoring in the latter part of the game until we got down into the fourth quarter, and we get marching down the field, and we're down by 3 points. And John makes the decision to go ahead and kick the field goal on third down because he knew that if there was a bad snap or something, he'd have another down to be able to kick the field goal. And Earl comes into the game, kicks the field goal, and we tie it up, and it goes to overtime. And then, of course, there's no scoring in the first overtime quarter. But backing up towards the end of the fourth quarter, before we went into that overtime, and they scored and went ahead on in the game is when the running back came over the offensive line on the goal line, and that's where I cracked a vertebrae in my neck, and didn't know it for 6 months.
Oh.
So after the game was over with, they took some X-rays, but nothing showed up. The X-ray machine was the one that they had in the locker room, and it probably wasn't as good as what you would have had in a regular medical facility, but during the off season, then I was having some challenges and some issues, and had another X-ray taken. And the person reading the X-ray says, "Well, were you cracked a vertebrae in your neck?" And I went, "What?" I said, "Yeah." And they showed me the line on the X-ray where it had happened, and then I began to realize when I did it, and it was in that Baltimore game.
Wow.
So I finished. I came out for one play, went back in and finished playing that game, and then the following week, typical Raiders, they put me in the hospital during the week, but they would check me out in time to go to practice, and then put me back in after practice was over with. And but somehow they thought maybe I would somehow miraculously recover.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, I never know, right?
Monte Johnson.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Then the next week we go on and we play Denver in the AFC Championship game, and if you remember, that's what led to instant replay in the NFL. That was the Rob Lytle fumble, and Rob, he's on the goal line, and once again, Jack and I, we hit Rob, and the ball comes loose. Mike McCoy picks it up, and he's 40, 50 yards down the field, and then the referees don't know where the ball is, and they blow the whistle. And there's Mike standing down there, right in front of John in front of our bench. And the referee said they didn't know what had happened. So when they blew the whistle, the ball was dead. They put it back on the goal line and let them have another play, and they scored on the next play.
Oh, It's Monte Johnson here with us. Once a Raider, always a Raider here on the Morning Tailgate. Raider Nation Radio 920, Super Bowl champion Raider, great Raider legend. To the point, Monte, Vinny brings up a good point in terms of the development your first couple of years. We're in the heart of training camp right now for the Raiders, right? And I was going to ask you, your favorite, memory as a Raider. Hard to beat what you were just talking about there in Baltimore. But take me back to training camp, and especially those first couple of years as you're a guy in a new position trying to find his way in the league with, a bunch of men and professionals, with families and mortgages and things of all that nature, and it became a different world for you.
Yeah, so I come to training camp as a rookie, and the protocol that we had when I was in college was, our head coach was called Coach Devaney or Coach. And so I get to the Raiders, and I'm calling John Coach or Coach Madden. And the first 2 weeks that we're in training camp was all the rookies and the free agents. And then the vets didn't show up until, a week before the first preseason game. So all the vets show up, and I'm sitting there. And now, mind you, 6 months earlier, I'm in my dorm watching the Raiders play in a playoff game. So I'm watching guys on TV that I end up playing with. And, people like George Blanda and Darryl Lamonica and, Fred Biletnikoff and Willie Brown and, on and on and on. But I didn't, I just followed the same protocol, and I called Coach Madden. I called him Coach or Coach Madden. Well, all those other vets were calling him John, and I will have to admit they probably called him a few other things behind his back. But anyways, fast forward towards the end of training camp, and I'm standing there watching the practice, and all of a sudden I realize that John is standing right next to me. Doesn't look at me, just looks out at the practice that's going on, and he says, "Why do you call me Coach Madden?" And I said, "Well, that's what I had done in college, and that's what I understood would be the appropriate thing, and no one's told me anything differently." And he says, "Well, Monty, I want you to know something." I said, "We're a family, and when you're a family, everybody calls each other by their first name, and my name is John."
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Wow.
Right there, man.
And I was stunned at that point because I realized he had told me two things. One is that it was okay to call him John, and second of all, that I had made the team.
Wow.
Because he called me part of the family.
That
was John.
I got goosebumps.
That was
just
John.
now.
That's just the way John did things. He was always looking for ways to inspire you and encourage you. I mean, let me fast forward now to March of 1977. This is 3 months after the Super Bowl against the Vikings. And I had just had my wife and I had just had the birth of our first daughter. And I was home, and, I'd gotten up to take care of the baby and, being a really good dad, all that kind of good stuff, right? And so all of a sudden the phone rings. And now we're living in Lincoln, Nebraska during the off season. Back then they let us do those kinds of things. And the phone rings, and I said, "Hello." And the person on the other side of the phone says, "Monty." And if you've ever talked to John, you just know immediately, it's John Madden. And I said, "Oh my gosh, what is John calling me for?" And I said, "Wait a minute. It's 8:00 here. It's 6:00 in the morning in California. What is John doing calling me at 6:00 during the off season?" And I went, "Oh my gosh, I've been traded." And he says, "Hey, I hear that you had a little girl. I wanted to call and tell you congratulations. And I just wanted to ask you something." So, okay. he said, can you think of a play in the Super Bowl that you were involved in that was really important and probably had a key impact upon the outcome of the game? And I knew there was something that I thought about and that I had, had participated in. It was a second down in the fourth quarter, and Minnesota. We were ahead 20-something, 25, 26 to 7 or something like that. But Minnesota had been moving the ball a little bit. And I read the play, and I shot the gap, and I tackled Chuck Foreman for about a 4 or 5 yard loss in the backfield. And that put them in a third down situation where they were kind of in between. Do we run the ball? Do we throw the ball? What are we going to do? And, of course, the next play, Tarkenton goes back for a pass. He gets pressured by Ted, and he puts the ball up, and Willie Hall intercepts it and runs it back for 20 yards. We take the ball, drive down the field, and score our last touchdown, and game's over. And John says to me, he goes, that's the exact play that I was thinking of. And I said, well, I appreciate that, and thank you. And he said, I'm just so glad that you're my middle linebacker. I mean, all of these incredible, nice things, and yet the real purpose for him calling was to congratulate me for the birth of my daughter. That's just John.
That's an unbelievable story. Unbelievable story. Monte Johnson, Super Bowl champion with the silver and black. Monte will be with the alumni at the alumni reunion here in Las Vegas next week as the Raiders get set to take on the San Francisco 49ers in that preseason finale. And I also have to shout this out, Monte, that you were a Raiders alumni peer captain. And for those that don't know, you're one of the guys that reaches out to other alumni in terms of helping them, with whatever they may need, or just making sure they stay in the circle, in the family, as you put it, and as John Madden put it, because the Raiders, at the end of the day, are a family, and the way they take care of the alumni, and you are part of that as well, second to none. So on behalf of, I know, a lot of alumni in Raider Nation, thank you, and for continuing that family feel with the Raiders.
Well, thank you all very much. It's a privilege, and, I've got a lot of incredible memories from my time playing with the Raiders, and I will admit that so many of the opportunities that I had in life and the experiences I had in life are directly related to the fact that Al Davis saw me that day in Tampa. And I will forever be grateful to him. I remember the day that I had to retire, when Tom Flores had to tell me that I had failed my physical. And, my response to Tom was one of, Tom, I just want to tell you and the Raider organization, thank you so much. You took the chance on a guy that never started in college, gave me the opportunity, believed in me, had confidence in me. And I just want to tell you, I'm so grateful and appreciate it. And Tom looked at me and he goes, Monte, I don't think I've had anybody ever thank me when I've told them that that they had to be released. And I said, well, Tom, it's okay. I said, life is what it is, and God is sovereign, and he's in control, and nothing happens in my life that first doesn't get filtered through the hands of God. And he's got a plan and a purpose, and it's no longer to be with the Raiders. So, how could I say something else? Thanks so much, Tom.
Well, I think I can speak for all of us here and all of Raider Nation. Once a Raider, always a Raider. Monte Johnson. Monte, can't thank you enough. So grateful for your time, your stories. Let's do it again very soon. Look forward to seeing you next week when you get in town.
Yeah, a lot more stories.
All right, Monte Johnson. Once a Raider, always a Raider. Unbelievable. I got goosebumps when he was talking about John Madden, what he was saying to him. And let that be an incredible, inspirational story for everybody. You never know who's watching and when. A guy who never started says, yeah, I'll play linebacker for the drill. And that set forward a domino effect in his life that not only changed his life, the trajectory of the Raiders, et cetera, et cetera. Incredible stuff. Always be ready for your opportunity, Vinny. You never know when it's going to come. The Morning Tailgate does continue after this, but first.
Be willing to say yes when asked. Don't always say no. Don't be lazy. Just go out there and do it, even if you're putting yourself on a little bit on the high wire act, because to Vince's point, you never know who might be watching and who you might be impressing and what life you might end up changing, including your own, which is what I'm talking about here, because when it comes to your health, when it comes to your weight, when it comes to feeling better and being more like yourself, we kind of all go through those ups and downs in life, and we always intuitively know, I got to do something about this. And it seems like a lot of times we often say, yeah, but I'll get started tomorrow, or I'll do it tomorrow. I know I got to do it, but I'll do it tomorrow. Well, guys, those tomorrows start running out really fast. And here's the thing. You have an opportunity right now today with City MD. If you're tired of feeling sluggish, frustrated with your weight, dealing with daily aches and pains, or just not feeling like yourself, it's time to take control. City MD in Las Vegas offers personalized wellness and weight management programs designed for real, lasting results, but they don't stop there. City MD also provides advanced pain therapy and primary care, giving you a complete head-to-toe approach to your health. One team, one plan built around you. More energy, less pain, better health, real confidence. Look, stop putting it off. Stop waiting. Give them a call at 725-255-7246. That's 725-255-7246. Our good friends Andy or Claudia will take it from there. Or you could go to citymdphp.com. That's citymdphp.com right now and schedule your consultation. City MD, stop waiting. Start feeling like yourself again today.
And especially we go against our defense, which is fantastic, and which is a top defense every single day, and then now be able to go against the Texans defense, which is also a top defense in the league, go against them, be able to get some reps with the ones against the superstars on their defense, and then obviously their twos are fantastic as well. We got so much work, whether it was move the ball, first down, third down, red zone, 2 minute. There's so many situations, and I believe overall it was a positive day. There were plays that I loved and plays that I wish I had back, but in reality, that's a lie. I wish I didn't have them back because it's a growing experience, and it's practice. It's practice, and this is what I love, and it's just a beautiful day to play football here, and I'm so happy I have so many things to learn from today.
Covering the Raiders with the Las Vegas Review-Journal, it's Adam Hill with the Morning Tailgate on Raider Nation Radio 920.
That was Fernando Mendoza you just heard following the joint practice. His zest for life, second to none. Also, man, he can't lie for more than a second without apologizing, correcting himself. I lied. I'm sorry again. I'm not angry that I had bad passes. I'm happy I had bad passes. I mean, zest for life is second to none, which is why we bring in now with the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Adam Hill. And before we get into joint practice, Vinny tells me that there was a commotion going on in the lobby last night. Did you have anything to do with that?
No, I was out. But first of all, are you suggesting I don't have the same zest for life that one young Fernando Mendoza does?
Quite the opposite. I think it is equal, if not more so.
I'm glad. I guess I'm glad I was out. What was there? Was there like people shooting downstairs, or what? What's going on?
No.
It could be the construction. There's just a massive amount of construction going on in this hotel, which, by the way, the most frustrating, it might be the oldest courtyard in the history of the world, because you can't even, like, hook up Netflix and YouTube through the TV. Oh. I'm actually watching normal channels like it's 1975. Oh. What is going on?
Yeah, I'm actually changing hotels, Adam, just to let you know. So I'm with you. I'm with you on the when you can't. Yeah, just get your normal streaming channels. That's a little bit of an issue, but hopefully with the renovations, because there are renovations going on, that'll change for future guests. And it is a nice area though. The Galleria is a really nice section of Houston, so I'm not complaining.
What were you doing in the lobby? What kind of commotion were you causing?
I wasn't. I heard a little something, and it was a late night, and I knew you guys. I knew you and Sam were out burning the midnight oil. So I thought, oh boy, Adam and Sam are back, or maybe you were just leaving. Who knows? But how was last night's outing in Houston?
Tremendous. Found a place with actually a couple of places with some great DJs right in the area, and it was nice. It was good to experience. I'm not the biggest fan of Houston. I've trashed it pretty repeatedly, but this is the only acceptable area of town. Once I started staying in this area, became a little bit bigger fan of Houston, but it's still not high on my list of NFL cities.
All right. Adam likes walking cities, so this isn't really. This is a. You better have a car because it's spread out in Houston.
Yeah, I think the second largest city by area in the country, and nobody can guess. Nobody can guess the first one. It's very surprising to a lot of people. No, it's Jacksonville.
Damn,
Jacksonville is very big.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Just massive. Also,
and it's building out too. It's building out. Yeah.
All right. Joint practice, Adam. Biggest takeaway from what you saw Tuesday.
Texans are a playoff team, and the Raiders are not. I think that was kind of what you saw, and it wasn't complete domination or completely destroyed. I know, I do like when you see narratives that are out there, and then people see some tweets and they put together tweets from different people that are here, and then come out with stuff like, "Oh, the Texans completely dominated," and it's. That's not the case. And I actually saw some Raiders fans saying, I think the Raiders won the practice. I was like, well, you weren't here. I don't really understand how that developed either. But, I think you saw where the Texans are in their development and where they are as an organization. You saw where the Raiders are. They're ascending, and they're trying to get to that level. But, you did see, I think, that the Texans are ahead of where the Raiders are, mostly at the line of scrimmage, which I thought was, pretty much controlled by the Texans, kind of on both sides. I was on the offensive field for about 80% of it, but the times I went over the defensive field, the defensive field for the Raiders, they were having some troubles up front as well. I mean, obviously Max is Max, and he created some havoc, but the Texans were, doing a pretty good job of the line of scrimmage as well, and they were able to run the ball pretty effectively from what I saw, and also what Sam Gordon, my colleague, was he was over there for the whole time. That was what he kind of picked up. And when they were able to run the ball, they were also able to kind of open up some passing lanes and have some success through the air as well, which is a lot of what we saw against the Cardinals last week, right? Where they ran the ball and then their quarterbacks were able to go 16 of 16 to start the game because they were controlling the line of scrimmage in that way. And that's kind of what we saw yesterday. And I think that's, where the Raiders are in their development right now.
Yeah, completely agree with all of that. Let's start with the offensive line. The defense, I think, is a whole other thing for me, and we'll get to that. But from the offensive line's perspective, I see a lot of people on Twitter saying, "See, we knew that this was a huge problem. Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that?" Even after yesterday, Adam, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. I actually think that for at least 1 year, the answers are here. I don't think this is – I would be shocked if it was as bad as it was last year. I'm expecting and predicting improvement from the offensive line. I don't know how significant, but I think it's going to be noticeable, especially by the end of the year and into the year. But what are your thoughts? Did yesterday say to you, oh, my gosh, this is going to be terrible, the Raiders got to go make some moves, or this is going to be another bad year for them on the offensive line?
Well, I think you're safe in predicting that they're going to be improved. It can't be worse.
Well, true.
I mean, I don't know how that would be possible.
It could stand pat. It could stand pat, though.
I mean, that would be pretty stunning when you add Tyler Linderbaum that it would stand pat. I don't think they can. I don't think it's going to be what it was last year. I certainly don't think it's going to be any worse. If it's worse, I might just stop covering the team. I can't watch that again. I can't do that again. It was just they couldn't get anything going. But no, in reality, it's going to be better. I think that's absolutely fair. My takeaway wasn't necessarily, oh, this offensive line is a disaster. They're completely overwhelmed. It was more, wow, the Texans are good. They're just so good up front. I think you saw against the Cardinals, I think you certainly saw some improvement. I think you saw a line that, I think certainly, as I said, the addition of Tyler Linderbaum makes them better. I think Caleb Rogers is ascending. Obviously Jackson Powers-Johnson didn't play yesterday, and we don't know his long-term status. It doesn't seem like it's going to be anything that affects him for a long period of time. But if he's back in the lineup, we know what he can do when he's right. There's a lot of inconsistency and highs and lows from him, but he does have talent for sure. I think Spencer Burford quietly is having a pretty good camp. I think he's going to be okay. I don't think he's going to. He's not like a game-changing player like Linderbaum is, but I think he's going to be okay. And, a healthy Colton Miller is a good thing also for the group. And he struggled yesterday as well. But, I mean, that is an elite defensive line yesterday. I think a lot of teams are going to struggle against them. So I wouldn't be panicking and freaking out about it. I think they're improved. I don't think they're great yet up front. And I think that's a long way away. But they're going to be better, and that's going to allow the offense to have a little bit more, gain some, momentum and cohesiveness and look a little bit more organized than maybe they did at times last year.
After preseason week 1 and the joint practice, do you have concerns about the Raiders' run defense?
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't take much from the preseason at all. Individual players, I think you could watch and kind of see how they're doing and how they're playing and how they're performing. And there's things like that you can pick up for sure. Schematically, I take almost nothing from it. I mean, I think most teams, and I think the Raiders in particular, they're concerned. If you talk to people around the team, like, they're like, hey, we have to get better here. We have to improve in this. But what you saw was not what you're going to see in terms of scheme and game planning and all that. It's kind of you just got to roll out there. And, there are teams that scheme now, I know, and that's quite famously have a ton of success in the preseason. But for the most part, it's like, hey, just go out there, play head up, go against the guy in front of you, and see what you can do, see if you win your battle. And that's not what the defense is necessarily going to look like once the season starts. I know that they have to get better. I know that they have to be better at winning those battles. Like, no matter how good your scheme is or what your game planning, you still have to win individual battles. So, yes, I want to see that, but I don't read a whole lot into how the preseason goes as a team. Like, people that are like, oh, they won or they lost, like, who cares? You're just looking at individuals, not necessarily the overall way that the team looks.
So with that being said, better question, who are you most interested in seeing tomorrow night?
Well, I don't know who's playing yet.
Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't get a whole lot of clarity from Clint Kubiak yesterday. It sounds like the plan is probably for starters to not go. But I did ask him straight up, will the tape from today reveal who's playing and who's not? And he said yes. Now, he didn't clarify what that meant. My read from it would be, hey, if you did your job and you played okay as a starter in the joint practice, you're probably going to sit. And if you didn't, and we need to see more from you, you might play. But he didn't say that. That's just an interpretation. So we'll see who's out there and who's playing. I mean, obviously it's the guys. I'll say the defensive backfield because I don't think a lot of those guys are necessarily going to sit. I think they need reps. And I think, a guy like Jermod McCoy, who, if you look back, obviously you take 2 isolated plays, really 3 isolated plays, because he did give up another catch on the sideline besides the 2 touchdowns. Like, you take those plays and you would say, oh, that was a disaster. But I think there was a lot of good work that he did. When you go back and review, like, the plays that were bad stood out so much. But there was some good things he did in a game that he hadn't played in, close to 2 years. I think there were some positives, and I want to see if he can build off those and play a little better. I think Traden Stukes is a guy, you want to see him. You want to see Dalton Johnson. You want to see the young defensive backfield, I think you want to see out there. And then obviously whoever is playing on the lines, you just want to see them compete. Because I don't know what the Texans are going to do either. I doubt that they're going to play starters for very long, if at all. So, you're not going to necessarily see those high-end matchups. That's what the joint practices are for, where you can get a lot more work in than you can in a preseason game. So I would expect maybe both teams are light on starters that are playing, but a lot of those rookies and young guys, especially defensive backfield, I want to see from the Raiders, and then the guys on the line of scrimmage, whoever is playing, I want to see if they can kind of control the line a little bit better than they were able to in the joint practice.
Adam, I want to talk a little bit about Fernando Mendoza, and I want to preface it by saying last week I was up in Santa Clara watching the 49ers practice against the Titans, and I was kind of disappointed in what I saw from Cam Ward against a really good 49ers defense, and they had a bunch of their good players out there, not all of them, but enough. And the Cam Ward that I watched for a full day he looked confused at times, a little just kind of jumpity a little bit. He felt the pressure, and you could just see the demeanor and sort of confused at times and rushed and all those things against a really good 49ers defense. It was not a good day for the Raiders offense yesterday. It wasn't a good day for the quarterbacks. They struggled to get things going and everything that we've written about and talked about. But what I didn't see from Fernando Mendoza, and there you were pointing out some things with the footwork and the handoffs and things, some finer things that he's got to definitely smooth out. But what I didn't see was any panic, any bewilderment, any confusion. I felt like, despite some of the results, there was none of that. And I feel like that's a strong suit for him. What did you see from Fernando yesterday? The good, the bad, and the ugly, but kind of also maybe the how well he handled a tough day at the office.
Yeah, I'm going to put the Cam Ward stuff on the power plant, I think, if they're practicing in San Francisco. That's probably what happened there.
Right.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think we saw from Fernando Mendoza what we see almost every day in practice, right? You see the high-end throws and the wow plays, and you're very excited, and you understand why he's the number one pick, and then it's just the little details that still have to be figured out and worked out, and you say, oh, yeah, he's a rookie. I forgot. It's his first time, because there is so much attention. There's so much hype, and he's trying to develop under this huge spotlight. One of the things I wanted to ask him yesterday, and we kind of ran out of time with Fernando, was just obviously his life has been in a complete spotlight for the last year, and everybody understands that. But as a rookie, like, you kind of just want to go about your business and developing and at your pace, and they wanted to be able to develop at his pace. And yet, his preseason debut was the talk on every single show around the country that everybody's focusing on. And there's really no ability right now. I think when the season starts, it'll be different. But there's no ability right now to just kind of, make your mistakes and develop, and everything is so scrutinized and publicized. But yeah, I think that's what we are seeing. He understands his responsibilities, understands his role, he understands what's expected of him, and I think he's doing a good job answering to those things, like just kind of going along and not making the same mistake twice for the most part. And he's not panicking, and I give him a lot of credit. What he mentioned yesterday is exactly what I was saying in the press box last week, that he needed to calm down his feet. And, I mean, he did look, I mean, if you want to use the word panic, you can. I thought he did when he first came in the game last week, because his feet were just all over the place. But to his credit, it didn't take until like week 4 of the season to figure that out. I thought it took to the second half. I thought that he calmed down a little bit. And I think that was just kind of nerves early in the season, right? So he corrects things very quickly. He understands where he needs to make those adjustments. And, what he said yesterday is exactly what I thought he had last week, where it was like, all right, just, drop back, set your feet, throw. And I thought there was some happy feet a little bit, but it's corrected. And I think that's what you really like about his development. And what you're seeing is that he's not, if he is showing those signs of panic or confusion, like, they don't last long. He gets them corrected and figured out. And, I thought yesterday, like you said, first handoff of the day, kind of ran into the running back. Like, you can't have those things, and that's why he's, probably why he's not starting in the eyes of Kubiak. But, like, then he went on to have a good day, and he had those wild throws, and he doesn't let those things linger, which I think is a good thing.
Adam, we absolutely love your work. We appreciate you coming on this morning. We wish you the very best and a safe travel back from Houston. I look forward to talking again next week, my friend. Thank you.
And your zest.
Can't wait to get home.
Oh, that's good. Have a safe travel home, my friend. Take care.
All right. Wow. Take that, Houston.
I know the Houston Chamber of Commerce taking it in the neck.
702-365-9200. It's the Morning Tailgate to Tuesday. Welcome back inside the Morning Tail. What is this? What
Transcendence.
What is that instrument that makes that?
It's a fast little hands on the keyboard right there.
Welcome back inside the Tailgate. 702-365-9200. Did Tuesday change any of your thoughts, outlook, hopes, worries for the 2026 campaign? I think we might have the text of the day, gentlemen. East Bay Raider Gray. Yesterday was a good litmus test. The Raiders are at the beginning of a rebuild. Spitex said it would not happen over one offseason. We know we still have holes on this roster. Patience will be needed. The Raiders' progress will not be reflected in the amount of wins, but how they play and get as a team.
I agree, and just the even notion of, and I know you were doing a counter argument, Vince, but like the Hail Mary, I don't see this group throwing any Hail Marys anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Like they understand where they are right now, and to me, investing a high pick and or trading a high pick and the salary that would come with it. To get a player who's north of 31 years old, that's to me, that would be kind of a Hail Mary at this point, But that doesn't mean that they're not going to be on the lookout for defensive line help or help anywhere. Quite honestly, I have a feeling they were. I'm sure. They had a whole bunch of staff out here yesterday. I'm sure they're looking at some of the players on the Texans right now, as you should be, just in case somebody that catches your eye is available on the waiver wire that you just got some eyeballs on and were impressed with. So this is an ongoing process. It's just that there's some things that might have to wait, but I would not be surprised at all if they brought in some reinforcements at some positions along the way this year. Absolutely.
And as we wait for preseason game number 2 in Houston, we will look back one more time and break down the film from preseason game number 1. Marcus Johnson, Tate Don't Lie, joins us to kick off hour number 3 here on the Morning Tailgate.
He's poring over the film day and night. It's Marcus Johnson from Tate Don't Lie on YouTube, here on the Morning Tailgate.
It's hour number 3 here on the Morning Tailgate, Raider Nation Radio, 920, the flagship for the silver and black. Vince Sapienza, Vinny Bonsignore, and Clay Baker coming to you live from Las Vegas to Houston following the joint practice between the Raiders and Texans on Tuesday. What are we, 30 whatever hours are away from preseason game number 2 in Houston Thursday night. But before we get to that lone road preseason game, we need to look back on the game that was preseason game number 1, and really what many may believe is the start to the beginning of the Fernando Mendoza era. Marcus Johnson of Tape Don't Lie with us here at training camp. Now back home in the den of tape and film, cutting it up. The program said day and night. I hope that's true, Marcus. I hope you've been poring over it day and night, because everybody has been poring over every single throw, every single walk up to the line of scrimmage for Fernando Mendoza. How do you grade what you saw from number 15 in preseason game number 1? What did you like? What didn't you like?
I would say, to me, I'd give him an A for the first preseason game that I saw. Because, there's a lot of the little nuanced things that he does. He's doing really well that I wasn't expecting him to be already kind of advanced in those things already. And he really has a grasp of the offense overall already. Like, you could just tell just how quickly he's getting to his reads. Because, one thing that, stood out to me is that when you see a lot of young quarterbacks, if they see something and they're not sure about like a defensive player's angle or something like that, or maybe they feel like they might throw an interception, they kind of just stare at it for a long period of time. And then by the time they get to the second read, like they got to get rid of the football, or they got to run out of the pocket and those type of things. But you saw Mendoza like get to the backside in like under 3 seconds a lot of the times when he was making a lot of plays out there. And that was a really big thing for me, because that kind of shows that he knows that the clock's in his head is going off, and he's got to get rid of that football. He just can't sit back there all the time. He's got to really get through his reads. And also it gave a good understanding that he knows where to go as well. Even the throw he missed late in the game, where I thought if Tompkins kept running, that would have been a touchdown. He was supposed to go to Ian Thomas, and maybe he thought that Ian Thomas wasn't going to get the first down because Ian Thomas was open, but he went to the second read and found a wide open guy for a touchdown, right? I mean, and I still think if Tompkins keeps running, he's going to score there. So much growth for him there. The only things that I would say that, that I thought he could get better at is like outside the pocket, is just making sure he keeps his eyes up, or getting rid of the football, or just throwing it away a whole lot earlier instead of trying to, figure out what to do. I think he learned that the NFL is faster than he thought, because one of the plays where, he had to get rid of the football, he was trying to outrun a defensive end, and it didn't work. And I think he figured out that then this isn't the Big Ten. You just can be able to outrun guys to the outside all the time. So I think when he gets out of the pocket, he's got to keep his eyes up too. And then like when you're facing pressure, sometimes especially in the red zone, you just got to throw it over players' heads, and there's not as much intentional grounding when you're inside the 10 because everybody's kind of in that area. So if you just throw it over the tight end's head, really high, you're still targeting that player. So I think he's just got to get, kind of used to some of those things. But I thought everything he did, like the small things, getting the check downs, making sure that, he's getting through his reads quickly, understanding what he needs to do. And, having really good poise in the pocket. I thought he showed a lot of that. So I was really excited about his performance.
Marcus, I think everybody got a really good glimpse yesterday. Not necessarily if you were here. I mean, if you weren't here at practice, you didn't get that kind of a glimpse. But how Fernando handled himself at the podium yesterday after what can be described as a rough day. Although I thought he handled everything really well in real time. No bewilderment, no confusion, he wasn't freaking out back there by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that he was working against a really good defense. But I think everyone got a chance to see that element in him in the podium session that he had immediately after practice. I'm sure you watched. I'm sure you listened. What were your takeaways of how Fernando processed and handled what was a rough day against the Texans yesterday?
Yeah, I think you kind of see how he just handles everything, right? I mean, he sees everything as a learning experience, which I think that kind of shows, why I want him to play Week 1, because I think he shows that everything for him is a learning experience, right? And he's going to find ways to turn a negative into a positive, right? I mean, you have a bad throw, you throw a pick six, that's what happens in practice. You can see that, okay, figure out what happened there, what did I miss, what did I not see, and then I can get better there and figure out what's happening so I can continue to get better every single week. And that's why I'm always a fan of him playing early, just because, I think what's going to happen by week 14 and 15, if he gets those reps, he's going to be already ready to go, especially when you see him kind of getting threes already. Like he's going to be getting better every single time, every single game, even mid-game. He's going to be getting better. If he misses a read, he'll get to it the next time. Like, he's just one of those guys, right? He's going to never see anything as a negative. He's never really going to be down, right? And that's why I really like him. Like, he can go out there. He might throw 2 interceptions early on in the first quarter of a game and then come out there and end up throwing like 4 touchdowns or something like that, because it's going to be it's something he's not going to get down about. He's not going to pout about it. He's not going to do anything. He's just got to try to figure out why he threw those interceptions and try to fix that problem right away. Try to find a solution. Try to find a way to get better every single week. And that's one of the things you learned in that press conference, and basically what he was talking about. I mean, everything is a learning experience. Making those mistakes, dealing with a really tough defense, you get better. And that's everything that's important, especially for a quarterback like him that, it has that mentality. It's just great to see, and I think Raider Nation is going to see the benefits of it in the future.
There were so many questions leading up to these moments. Would the offensive line be better? What were you able to see, and what did the tape show about the offensive line now after the Cardinals game?
You can just tell that they're better coached. I mean, that's the first thing that you see. You see a lot of good technique. You see some different techniques they're running, different than last year. Just different ways of being taught, different ways of how they want to play together, right? I mean, you can even see on, some of the runs that Genty had early on, you could just see that, even though he might not be getting like 10 yards every single run, he's getting those 3 yards in some of those carries and ended up breaking 1 for 10 because, the offensive line, they're getting more push, right? Last year, felt like they didn't get any push. I just think Walter Nolan had a really great game, and I think that he made some plays, which is going to happen when you have, in the NFL with these type of players. I mean, there's just some guys who just have special talents, and they're going to beat your linemen sometimes, right? And I think that Walter Nolan was kind of, messing things up for the offensive line and making those runs 3 yards instead of being 4 or 5. But you still saw them getting pushed everywhere else, and I think that, you really saw it on that 10-yard run, and then the big run from Mike Washington. I mean, he had one of the biggest holes I've ever seen from the Raiders in like years. So, I mean, I think he was even confused a little bit. You can even tell he's like, oh, what? And he's like, oh my God, it was humongous. So, if the offensive line just looks a whole lot better, DJ Glaze looked great. I mean, I know he's getting beat by Will Anderson, but okay. So, a lot of fans are kind of upset about that. But who doesn't get beat by Will Anderson? And I kind of brought up how Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins got worked by those guys too. And those are some of the best tackles, right tackle, left tackle tandems in the league. They do great things for Josh Allen, and they couldn't stop those guys. So I think we have to, have some perspective on that. And DJ Glaze, he looked pretty good. His feet look better, those type of guys. They just look like a whole different team. And, I think Tyler Linderbaum has a little bit to do with that. And, Kirk Cousins, he barely even got touched when he dropped back. There was really no pressure on him when they had the first five in there. I think Caleb Rogers had a good game. So, JPJ might be out, but I think Caleb Rogers had a really good game as well. So did Charles Grant. So did Trey Zoon. The highlights of the offense, in my opinion, was the offensive line during the game. So I really feel like that those guys are showing a lot of growth, and just to see them play well all together. It just kind of gives you what will happen when they start game planning, because I think people don't realize sometimes offensive line game plan too. And I think when they start game planning and getting ready for people and understanding what they want to do and how they want to attack teams, we're going to see them play even better.
It's Marcus Johnson of Tate Don't Lie joining us here on the Morning Tailgate, Raider Nation Radio 920. All right, defensive line. I know, you can't have the secondary conversation without the defensive line, and sometimes vice versa, right? But 16 for 16 to start from the opposing quarterbacks is, any way you slice it, preseason or not, unacceptable, right? And one of the big things, I know everybody is looking at the youth in the secondary. I was kind of pointing to the fact that there didn't seem to be much, if any, of a push or penetration from anybody along the defensive line. And I don't care what scheme you're running or vanilla you're showing, there still has to be some kind of penetration. How did you see it? Where do you think the issues are, if any?
I think there's issue inside defense tackle. Tonka Hemingway, he was getting a lot of buzz in camp, but we didn't see that in the game, right? And I kind of saw him not getting the pressure that what I saw him even in person in training camp. And you want to see more from him, because he's going to be a big part of his defense. Like if he's going to be out there early on the downs, and like he was in the first preseason game, like he was out there as a starter. It was him and Adam Butler. You kind of have to see more explosiveness from him in the pass rush, because he isn't the best run defender, and I think we saw that a little bit. Even though I thought the first team played the run a whole lot better than the second team, I think a lot of the run defense talk is about the second team more than it is the first team. Because I don't think they didn't get ran over too much like the second team. They were just getting just beat up front. But I think the first team, it wasn't as bad, because I think Quay Walker and Kobe Dean are just better linebackers, right? And I think they can make up for some of it, in my opinion. And then when Max Crosby comes back, it's going to be totally different, right? So I was more worried about that with the first team with the run defense. I know they got beat up a little bit against the Texans, but we'll see. And you have Adam Butler and Tonka Hemingway out there. You might not have the best, run defense tackle, but those two guys are supposed to rush the passer, though, right? That's really when you have two guys like that, especially Adam Butler, who, that's really what he's been for most of his career is a pass rush specialist. If you're not getting that to the quarterback and you're not getting that interior pressure, you're not going to see too much, right? And, I think, Coons had a tough day. He's going against Paris Johnson, who's an emerging guy, who's probably, one of the, has a chance to become a top 10, top 5 tackle in the league, in my opinion. And then, you didn't see too much from Pay either. So it's a little interesting how they're going to look. But I think during the season, I think we're going to see more blitzes, though. That's how they're going to maybe make up for it. Of course, Max is going to be out there and get some pressure, because even at the joint practices, you heard about them getting pressure on C.J. Stroud, forcing some bad throws, forcing some interceptions and things like that. So I think they're going to get pressure in different ways. They're just going to have to mix it up. And I think they just didn't show us too much in the game. It was very vanilla, but it kind of shows maybe they might have a little bit of a talent deficiency there, because they don't have a guy who could just go out there and just beat people right away. And that's what I was talking about, like Walter Nolan. He was just going out there. It didn't matter like what the scheme was or anything. He was just beating people. And I think you need a defense tackle like that to kind of lift this group up a little bit.
Marcus, I think there's two things that are abundantly true about this secondary. There's some really good young prospects, some high-end dudes out there, but they're also extremely young collectively, not just individually, but collectively. And I think there's going to be some growing pains on that end. I'm hoping Raider fans can understand that it's hard to play a DB in the NFL when you're a young player. There's a lot to learn. What were your takeaways when you saw them in practice, but then also in the game, and some of those struggles carried on into yesterday's joint practice with the Texans from a talent standpoint, but also the technical standpoint that they have to, just learn how to do it at the NFL level?
Yeah, I mean, one thing you saw, especially on the game film, is I think in man coverage, I think some of these players kind of got I wouldn't say exposed, but just shown like some of the struggles that you have with him coming out. Like, Masses to me was always a zone guy. That's what I really liked about him, is how he could play zone, right? And he was asked to play man a lot in that game. And, shout out Jalen Brooks from the Cardinals, but that dude, he was running routes all over them, right? And I think that maybe he just might be a little bit underrated too. So that has a little bit to do with it. But like he was just he was cooking them all day, right? He had a couple of releases on Masses that I don't think Masses have seen before. And that's kind of the thing that you have to get used to too, as well as a young corner, is that the NFL receiver is totally different than the college receiver. They're going to have a lot more in their bag to get some releases on you that maybe you're not expecting. Like what happened to Masses on one play against Jalen Brooks is, Brooks got square and then he just cut on a dime inside, and maybe you've probably never seen that before. But that's just how NFL receivers are a little bit different, right? I mean, especially when they're more nuanced to route running and a lot of different things, because it's harder to get open in the NFL. So you gotta add those things to your release packages. And I think, especially with McCoy, I think McCoy, he was in position on both of those touchdowns, right? I just think that he wasn't used to, guys being more physical at the top of the stem and kind of them pushing off a little bit. And, he wasn't used to those type of things in college, right? I think especially in college when you could grab a whole lot longer, right? And you can kind of, stick on these guys, and not have pass interference. You got to find a way to kind of, make sure that you don't lose that space so they can have that opening. Because that's what happened to him. He's in perfect position when the ball's thrown in the air, and when the ball's in the air, especially against back shoulders, it gets tough. And you see, especially when you have guys that are having late hands and different things like that. So I think that has a little bit of a factor of why they struggled in the secondary a little bit. But I do believe that, it's growing pains, right? I mean, they're young guys. They got to learn these things because it's a totally different animal. The NFL wide receiver is a totally different thing. That's why you see even young wide receivers that come in, sometimes it takes them 3 years to become good. Some guys are good right away, but some wide receivers takes about 3 years for them to kind of keep taking those steps because it's a totally different league. You got to have to learn those small nuances of what you want to do as a route runner. And the same thing as a corner. You got to learn some of those things. And like at the top of the route, you can't grab as much, but they can still give you some veteran pushes, and you have to learn how to combat that. So I think that's something they just got to get better at a little bit and just kind of get used to what's happening in front of them, and that's why they need to play. I think it's important that they keep getting those snaps, in the preseason and kind of learn those things because you're still facing some pretty good wide receivers because these guys are in the NFL level, and they kind of saw that this week, last Thursday.
What did the tape show about Keyron Crawford, who was able to kind of show the get-off that he displayed in college, but also how could he use that game to kind of stack certain experiences to where he starts doing this on a consistent level?
Yeah, I thought Keyron Crawford made some plays. I thought he actually, showed a lot of speed. He almost had a couple sacks. Yeah. But the Gardner Minshew was kind of giving that ball really quickly. He had a really good rush on one play, but Minshew got rid of that ball like almost 1 second, and so. You saw some explosiveness from him. He had a really good play where he was able to make a tackle. He came all the way backside. You kind of see what they're teaching how those guys had to attack that way. But I thought I saw some good things from Crawford. I was actually, kind of the buzz online after the game is, of course, because you don't see him making a play that he didn't play well. I don't really agree with that. I think he had some moments where, if the secondary did hold up a little bit longer, that he would have got a sack, and we would have been talking about him totally different because, the sacks kind of add up, and that's what the fans see. They want to see, the quarterback go down, and, pressures kind of is something that you're going to see later on in stats. But I thought that he did a good job of rushing the passer. He showed some different moves. He did a bull rush, and he did a rip through on one play, another play, but the ball was out already. Yeah. So I mean that's how quarterbacks have to attack a pass rush anyways. So it's kind of sometimes when you see those guys win and the ball comes out that quick, you're not gonna get praise from anybody. But just when you go back to the film, you saw some explosiveness from him, and there's something there, right? You saw something there that maybe you can build on, and you saw a guy who hustles too. And I thought, he's got to get better at playing the run, and you kind of saw that, when Jeremiah Love was starting to go off a little bit in the second quarter. But of course, I mean, as a pass rusher, that's what he really is coming in as. And also, you saw him drop as a linebacker a lot more than I was really expecting too. So they're finding different ways to use him, but I still think there's some upside there with him for sure.
Marcus Johnson, follow him on the X at the Mark John NFL. Just last one for you, Marcus, as we appreciate you as always. Tomorrow night, preseason game number 2 against the Houston Texans. We really don't have a clear view of who's going to be playing, who's not going to be playing, more importantly. But let me ask you this. Is there a player that has a bigger opportunity at their feet than Caleb Rogers?
No, I don't think so. I think Caleb Rogers has a chance to really go out there and win that job. I think he's going to be playing for a while too, especially because they don't have a lot of depth at guard. In my opinion, at this point, I think it's something they got to look into because they lost Justin Pickett, and so you had to see like JPJ and some of these guys play a little longer this past game than you think. So I think Caleb Rogers is going to play a lot. Right, he's going to be out there for at least for a good 3 quarters. And I think he has a chance to really, if he puts together a great game, he could really take that job from JPJ. Now, of course, we'll see what happens. If how much they like JPJ based on his injury. I think it's going to show us a lot too. I mean, JPJ still ends up being the starter week 1 of this, and after his injury, you kind of see that maybe the competition was there a little bit, but not as much as we thought. But if Caleb Rogers goes out there and plays really well, I think it's really going to show itself because I thought. This past game, he outplayed JPJ already. So if it's a true competition, I think Rodgers is really taking that step to really be that guy and be that starter. And, I think that might disappoint some fans, but, JPJ wasn't a draft pick of John Spytek and these guys. I mean, you have to kind of think about it that way as well. And then that kind of happens when maybe there's something they thought about him or whatever, and some of those things can happen. But Caleb Rogers, he goes out there and he wins the job outright. And, I mean, it is what it is. But, I really feel like that he has a step on JPJ already just based on how he played in the first preseason game.
It's Marcus Johnson. Tape Don't Lie. Catch his stuff up on YouTube. Marcus, what should we gear up for ahead of Thursday night's preseason game number 2?
So we did a live reaction to the joint practice, and then, of course, we already got a breakdown up. We went over about 4 or 5 guys on the last breakdown, so go ahead and check that out. If you want to join the membership, I got every single Mendoza throw. I went over every single throw that he did during his past game. And, of course, we're going to be doing a live instant reaction and then looking at the film of, what's happening with against the Texans on film for preseason. So just excited about the year starting and getting through it and watching all these young guys.
Marcus, appreciate you. We'll do it again next week. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Marcus.
Marcus Johnson at the Mark John NFL on the X. 702-365-9200. We'll get back to your calls, your texts. Did Tuesday change any of your thoughts, opinions, outlooks, hopes, desires, worries for the 2026 campaign, the Texans-Raiders joint practice? We want to hear from you next here on The Tailgate.
Upset toward the end of practice. What exactly happened on that?
Well, my elbow got hit, and I joke with Max. I say, you can touch me anywhere you want. Just don't touch my arm. But you want to bump me in the ribs. I think if anything, hit me in the hips or the ribs is actually good because it simulates what I need to feel. I said the elbow and the shoulders where I could sprain something pretty easily. So if you could just help me, I got some scars from some hits in real games where helmets go into armpits and things, and it ruins your season. So I was just asking him to just stay off the arm, and had to remind the Texans as well. You can hit me anywhere you want, or I might as well just take the red jersey off because you're playing with sometimes an understood rule that if it's not understood, then what are we doing?
That's Kirk Cousins asking for a little personal space in the midst of joint practice. And once again, a reminder of a message to anybody he practices with, the opposing team or teammates.
Doesn't mind a helmet in the armpit, but everything else off limits, not the arm.
In fact, hit me in the ribs. I'm good with that. And you get used to that pick that back up.
It only makes me stronger.
But speaking of injuries, I don't think teams want to play the Raiders right now. Have you seen this? Preseason game number 1, the rookie guard, Chase Besantis, goes down with likely season-ending injury. Jeremiah Love, who got a ton of work against the Raiders in that preseason game.
Yes, he did.
I think he's out a week or maybe 2 with a high ankle sprain. Is that what I saw?
Yeah, high ankles could be a while. You never know.
And then in the last few minutes, NFL reports are saying that Jaden Higgins, the Texans wide receiver, suffered a torn ACL in the joint practice on Tuesday.
Ooh.
Yeah, you hate to see it.
Yeah,
I hate to see stuff like that, man. Not good. That's why you kind of wince every time somebody, gets knocked down and struggles to get up a little bit, especially this time of year, because it just feels so unnecessary. But it's football, man, and it could happen at any moment. Unfortunately, for some, it's happening way before the games start really counting in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks or so. Just the unfortunate part of the game.
Yeah, and again, it's not necessarily the same, but segueing from Kirk Cousins being like, let's avoid the unnecessary stuff so that like seasons aren't ruined because of it. Now, what is necessary is getting in the work, right? Whether it was Besantis or Love or Jaden Higgins yesterday, it's not like people were going out of their way to hit him or injure him or things of that nature. It's just the nature of football, right? But it's just the tough. You never know when it's going to pop up. Jack Powers-Johnson goes down midway through a red zone drill in practice on Monday. And now his status is TBD. Jeremy Fowler reporting that it is believed to be short-term. Clint Kubiak saying not likely to see Jackson Powers-Johnson out on the field on Thursday, which again goes to the point that I asked Marcus about Caleb Rogers. As much as Fernando Mendoza is going to get room to run, it seems, right, for tomorrow, Caleb Rogers might have the best opportunity in preseason game number 2 in order to solidify whatever that may be. We'll get more on who has the most to gain and things of that nature on tomorrow's show. I do want to get to a couple texts from the question we're asking today is how much of it changed the outlook from that joint practice on Tuesday. Raider Sean says, didn't really do anything for me as far as the outlook for the team. I'm glad Fernando got some reps against probably one of the best defenses in the NFL, and he had his good moments. But it wasn't too long ago that we picked off Brock Purdy like 7 times and thought we had something cooking aside from the awful quarterback position, but you know what I mean. Also, it would be very frustrating if Raiders go this season with a bad run defense knowing they had the opportunity to fix it. And if we have a bad run defense, we will have to load the box, exposing our young cornerbacks. We will see what happens, though. God bless, go Raiders.
Love it.
Where was the other one? Well, see, this is the two sides of the coin that I'm kind of talking about. Vinny, you ready? We need to do some massaging here with Jesse. Jesse on the text line says, after watching preseason game 1 and hearing the reports from the joint practice, I feel good to continue to say, Raider Nation, buckle up for yet another long season. Maybe we'll get the number 1 overall, or we'll be back in that 6-8 win draft purgatory. I guess that's double the wins from last year, but a place where the Raiders are used to. Kind of sad when last year was a refresh because we had got the number 1 pick. That's the life of a Raiders fan, hoping for yet another number 1 overall pick because Lord knows this team can't win no matter what they do.
No.
Jesse,
somebody's got to go over there and give Jesse a hug or something, man. What's wrong?
High five, a hug, a cup of coffee.
He'll be all right.
And I want to go back to this, and I know we touched on it at the beginning, Vinny. And the Houston Texans winning the day, I know that doesn't equal a win for the Raiders, but it also doesn't equal a loss, right? Like, it's a joint practice, and them having the better of the day does not equal a loss for the Raiders. Like, it's not all black and white in these kinds of scenarios.
I agree, and that's why yesterday to me wasn't a loss. It was a valuable learning experience. The Raiders are on a journey. It's going to be a multi-year journey. I know Raider fans don't want to hear that, but that has nothing to do with John Spytek. It has nothing to do with Clint. Your frustration and it's all warranted. I'm not suggesting that it's not. The pain that you've suffered over the last few decades, however many you want to put on it. I know Fabian's saying it's longer than people sometimes actually make it out to be. That's fine as well. None of that has anything to do with Clint Kubiak. None of it has anything to do with Fernando Mendoza, with John Spytek, with the people that are currently in the building right now, trying to make this version of the Raiders work. And this version of the Raiders is at I wouldn't say square one by any stretch of the imagination, but it's closer to square one than it is to the final product that you hope delivers, high-end seasons and playoff appearances and hopefully the Super Bowl. It's closer to one than it is to that, and that's okay. Especially as I wrote in my column, for the valuable experience, wake-up call, whatever you want to call yesterday, is important for a team that I think for the first time in a long time is taking a truly hard, cold look at itself and is okay with what that reflection in the mirror tells them about themselves. They're not trying to sugarcoat anything. They're not trying to fake it till they make it. They're not trying to pretend they're a little bit further along or you do this sometimes. No, I haven't really gained 15 pounds. That's just that's a bad mirror. It's got to be a bad mirror. I'm as skinny as I've ever been. I'm as in great. And no, I'm not really. I got to get to the gym. I got to shed that 15 pounds. They're no longer doing that. They're no longer pretending that problems don't exist or they're this close to being where they need to be. They're steps away from where they need to be. And yesterday was proof of that. I don't think it necessarily surprised anybody. You've got some really smart football people in that building that understand the Texans are a really good team. It's literally why they came to Houston. They wanted to measure up against a defensive front like that. And look, talking to people that cover the Houston Texans, that's not something that they don't do on a daily basis to their own offensive line. And I would say that the Raiders' offensive line is better than the Texans' offensive line. So, and if you look at the Texans, they've been able to win a bunch of football games, even with an offensive line that, let's be honest, hasn't really been that good the last few years, right? So what I'm saying is, this wasn't oh my gosh, we stink, and this is such a shock and such a surprise. This was an honest look and an honest assessment of where they are 3 weeks before the season opener, kind of some things that they need to reinforce and work on and get better at. And those are all good things when you're taking an honest look at yourself and not pretending that you're further along than you really are.
Yeah, we shouldn't fool ourselves too much, and we shouldn't diminish any sort of hopes that you have in a early part of the season going into a joint practice with the Texans. I mean, this is a team that was second-ranked defense in the league, an elite defense, 13th in points scored on offense. They had a 10-game winning streak last year. Raiders had a 10-game losing streak last year. So think about the steps that have been made, but don't worry about the overall, because this was the ideal measuring stick you'd want to have as a team's trying to make an about face and trying to turn the corner into something new. And it was something that's a little bit more controllable and believable for long-term goals and long-term status. The short term right now, this was a very good joint practice where you could say, all right, this is a litmus test of where we stand against the very best, and now we know where we got to improve the most.
And again, I can appreciate the feeling Raider Nation has right now, right? Like losing at anything, like being second out of two is never great. I get that, especially coming off that preseason game against Arizona where you're like, it's Arizona. Well, they just went 16 for 16. Like, I can understand why there's a little bit of a growing, like, can we? But you got to push through the weeds a little bit and see the optimism that is there within the building for some of these young players doesn't just evaporate because there was a few rough plays yesterday,
right?
And the scale of weights and balances went in favor of the Houston Texans, a Super Bowl winning team. That's kind of all I'm saying. You can be frustrated that they're not quite where they need to be, but to also at the same time have the understanding this is a journey. Blackbeard in Iowa says, didn't we damn near beat these same Texans last year with Geno? Ashton had himself a game. We got a whole new team. Let's relax. Raider Nation. Central Coast Raider says, good morning, Tailgate Man. Let's be realistic. We knew the Texans were a better team and didn't get completely destroyed. Also, why is some of Raider Nation rooting for the number one pick again? That just means the team is not advancing, and it's all bad. 7 wins means they are taking steps forward. Go Raiders. But I'll go back to EB Raider Gray and say I'm Winning is at the forefront, right, for Clint Kubiak and this staff. Like that, you just have to be wired that way. But the organization and the building itself can also still have the same macro, overarching, long-term thinking of, like, we understand that we need to see it look differently as well, even if the wins aren't there. Those are wins in it itself. Those aren't moral wins. They can be considered organizational wins internally. So whether that's this season or in 2 years from now, because as Kai from the 510, C-A-I, Kai?
I like Kai.
I think it's Kai. I hope it's Kai. Kai from the 510 says here, I honestly feel like this is the first season I'm going to enjoy in a long, long time, and it's because I get to go into it with zero expectations. I'm feeling confident about the staff in place from the front office to the coaching. Feeling great about our young pieces, including finally having a franchise quarterback. I think it's going over 5 wins would be a successful season, but we have to be realistic about where we are and trust the future is bright. We will continue to build on this amazing offseason, and in 2 to 3 years, I'll be ready to expect a contender. Perfectly said, Kai. Perfectly said. I don't think yesterday's joint practice not going in the favor of the Raiders in totality washes away the entire optimism of the offseason, Vinny.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a proper way to approach this season and a healthy way to approach this season, and it's kind of what the Raiders is how the Raiders are approaching the season. Look, you want the best. If you're ahead of the game, once the games start and you make rapid development during the season, and all of a sudden you're even further along than you thought. That's fantastic. You would take that every day of the week, and that could happen. Nobody's sitting here and saying that the Raiders can't close some of that ground up or make up some of that ground with the players that they do have, because I do believe they can. In a lot of cases, it's just some young guys getting better and more cohesiveness being established and guys getting on the right page. In some cases, it is a personnel issue, and that's okay too. They didn't stop the draft. You're going to be able to have another offseason next year to address some of the needs that you still have, which they obviously do. Rome wasn't built in a day. So if you as long as you have it's kind of like Fernando, listening to Fernando talk yesterday. If you have it in the right perspective, good, bad, indifferent, and allowing yourself to use everything that happens not only as a learning tool, but as proof of what you need to work on, what you need to, whatever, all of the things, to get better, ways to get better, and how you need to go about getting better, whether it's bringing new players in at some point, young players getting better coaching, all of those types of things. As long as you're accepting, digesting, and processing everything that you see on a daily basis this year with an eye toward we're not a finished product, and we're going to use every piece of evidence, every experience to help us get better, then you're using the energy the right way. Yesterday could have been a total waste of time, or will be a total waste of time, if the Raiders don't heed some of those messages, don't lock in on some of the deficiencies and some of the issues that need to get better, and try to and do everything that in their power to get better from that. But I don't think it was a waste of time, and I think Fernando's words totally reflected that hey, I'm glad of some of the things that happened out there, because there's no repercussions other than the pain of that moment, because you didn't win or lose a football game. What it ended up being, and is extremely valuable, is a great learning experience, not just for Fernando, but for the entire organization.
702-365-9200 is the number. We'll get your final thoughts in the final sit-down, but not before Clay has a gift for you.
Well, everyone wants to get to Rebel Football's opener against Memphis. We got a couple pair of tickets here for you. 2 tickets for the Memphis Tigers against Rebel Football at Allegiant Stadium. It comes up soon, August 29th. Be caller number 9, and they're yours. 702-365-9200. Coming up next, it's the final sit-down on Raider Nation Radio 920.
It is the final sit-down here on the Morning Tailgate, Raider Nation Radio 920. Big thanks to our guests on today's program. Once a Raider, always a Raider, Monte Johnson. How was that for a conversation? Memory lane, those stories?
That's great. We get Al Davis stories, but I love hearing a John Madden story.
Multiple John Madden stories.
Yes.
Fantastic. It was really, really great stuff. Really appreciate Monty. He'll be here next week. Definitely one of those guys that's always at the forefront to shake the hand, sign the autographs, take pictures with Raider Nation. He's awesome. Adam Hill, Las Vegas Review-Journal, joined us, as well as Marcus Johnson, Tape Don't Lie. As a reminder, we have boots on the ground in H-Town, in Houston. Again, our own Vinny Bonsignor is there. JT the Brick, Q Myers, Brandy Flores, a social media manager here at Raider Nation Radio 920. Really great quality content and reactions, opinions, takes. And again, helping us provide the sights, the sounds, and things happening over there. So we appreciate each and every single one of them. Don't forget to stay with the flagship for the Silver and Black all day today. Again, JT the Brick from 12 to 2, Unnecessary Roughness with Q Myers from 2 to 5, live from Houston, giving more reaction, more analysis from what they saw, their takeaways from the joint practice on Tuesday, as well as looking ahead to tomorrow's preseason game against the Texans. One programming note for our local listeners here in Las Vegas: between 10 and 12, there might be down for a little, maybe like 10 minutes. Maybe. Don't want to put a number on it, but if you tune in and you're like, hey, what's going on? Don't worry. We will be back up and running starting at noon with JT again, bringing you live from Houston. Also of note, because the news just does not stop here on Raider Nation Radio 920. Aaron Wilson, who covers the Houston Texans, just tweeted out, Texans expected to rest several starters against the Raiders, which is a change in plan.
Wow.
From their original idea for Thursday. Again, that according to Aaron Wilson, especially as he is looking at the defense. Some offensive starters are still expected to play briefly, potentially C.J. Stroud. So change in plans a little bit for the Houston Texans. Clint Kubiak did kind of give I don't know if it was ominous, but the way he answered it felt very, very ominous, saying, when they look at the film, that'll dictate who plays Thursday night for the Raiders. So we will wait.
I don't know about that. If I'm Clint Kubiak, I might want to get my starters out there for a little while. I don't care who they're playing against. It's just more about me than who they're playing against.
For Vinny Bonsignor, for Clay Baker, I'm Vince Sapienza. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Morning Tailgate, Raider Nation Radio 920. Have a great day, everybody. We are back tomorrow.